Well, it's finally time to answer the question. Like many people, I used to think, you can't compare drivers from different eras of Formula 1. The sport just changes too much. We will never know who's the greatest of all time. But then, one night recently, I had an idea. It suddenly came to me in a dream. I was woken up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. That has nothing to do with the idea, I just have bad circulation. I was woken with two words in my head. Teammate, head to heads. Yes, it is two words, it's hyphenated. All you have to do is make a big chart showing every pair who were ever teammates and which one beat who. Verstappen beat Perez, Perez beat Stroll. Therefore, Verstappen is better than Stroll. Simple. All we have to do is keep adding people to this chain and then see who's at the top. It's easy. The one downside to this method is you do have to watch every season of Formula 1. It is quite a lot of seasons. Probably is going to take a while. It's not really realistic, is it? You would have to be crazy. Every season. I've seen it all. I made the chart. Every teammate pairing. Every single time someone beats someone else. I've seen it all. I found them. I found the GOAT. But before we get into that, let's lay out some ground rules. What do we mean when we say someone beat someone else? This would seem simple, right? But it's really not. F1 has had all different scoring systems over the years, and sometimes different systems give different answers. After a little bit of deliberation, I landed on some rules. Cue the montage. Everything is going to be calculated using the current point system, which has been in place since 2021. 25 points for a win, 18 for second, 15 for third, etc, etc. 1 point for the fastest lap, you know the drill. I like this point system because it gives the most separation, with large gaps from first to second to third. Several cases where people have finished equal on points at the end of a season are actually not equal if you apply the current point system. Perfect for what we're trying to achieve today. This does include sprint results up until 2022. It's not that many seasons, it doesn't play into it too much. And also, I hear you say, only up to 2022? Yes, we are not including 2023, mainly because it hasn't finished yet. A season win is based on points. Score more points than your teammate, you win that season. This does include partial seasons, i.e. not every race in a season, because there are lots of times when that comes up. There are loads of times when people missed 1 or 2 races due to injury or illness, swapped teams halfway through a season, got excluded, got entered into the same event in multiple teams. What? F1 history is messy, so what we're gonna do is just compare every single time any two teammates were on the same team, regardless of how many races that was. A multi-season win is based on the number of seasons won. Outscore your teammate in the first season together, you win that season. If they then outscore you in the second and third seasons, they beat you 2 seasons to 1. Does not matter if your overall points are higher, we are looking at season by season consistency. This does still include the partial seasons, which, as you will see, is very, very messy, particularly when we include the earlier seasons of Formula 1. If 2 drivers win an equal number of seasons, say 1 each or 2 each, then we revert back to total points during that period. Got it? Good. We've got our rules, so now it's just time to track this for every driver in the history of the sport. How many drivers could that be, right? Like 1, 200 maybe? Let me check. 869. New rule! You have to start at least 30 races to be on the list. What does that cut it down to? 205? It's still big, but we can work with it. And also, 30 feels like a nice number. It includes Zhou Guanyu, because he's on a couple seasons now, but it excludes any one-season driver in the history of the sport. At this point, that does mean that we don't get to see Oscar Piastri on here. Sorry, McLaren fans. If you're watching this in 20 years' time when he's a 12-time world champion, oops, I guess. Okay, so we've got our list of drivers. Now it's just time to fill in this massive spreadsheet with who won, lost, and drew against who. I hear you ask, how does this spreadsheet work? Let me explain. let's take the first line as an example, Adrian Sutil. We see here that Adrian Sutil lost against Fisichella when they were both at Force India, lost against Paul di Resta, won against Liuzzi, and drew against Alves and Gutierrez. Ah yes, draws. As we're comparing people on points, it is possible to draw if both drivers get 0 in a season, or if they finish the season equal on points, such as Alonso and Hamilton in 2007, which actually I realise now is a terrible example, because in this point system, they don't finish equal on points. Alonso beats Hamilton by 2 points. Anyway, you get the idea. They get a draw. I'm leaving draws on this spreadsheet for now, but they are going to get filtered out soon, because they tell me nothing. I don't care if 2 people are roughly the same. I'm not looking at roughly good drivers. I want to know the best one. Okay, so just need to do this for every single driver here, and lovely, there we go. Big old spreadsheet with every result in history. As it stands though, this spreadsheet doesn't help us much. It shows individual teammate battles, but we want to see the links between multiple people. We want to see the big old chain of drivers to see who sits at the top. Time to move on to phase 2. My plan was to put every name here onto a big sort of flowchart thing with a line from every loser to every winner to show who beat who. At first, I opened up Photoshop and started writing in all these names into there, and I crashed the system. Turns out it's quite a lot of names. Then I tried out Adobe Illustrator, thought maybe a vector-based software would handle this better, started writing, crashed it again. I did some searching, and I eventually found this software called Figma, which lets you draw text boxes, then link them together with these lines which automatically format, which is very helpful for what I'm trying to do. It also seems to have a seemingly infinite canvas size because this thing's going to be quite big. Perfect. This is not a sponsored segment, but genuinely, Figma, pretty good. Would recommend for like a group project or anything else. I don't know what you use computers for. Check it out. So, I got to work adding every single driver onto this and drawing all of their connections. And let me tell you, this ruined my life. I started this spreadsheet in June. It's now October! Making this goddamn thing has overshadowed months of my life. But it's finished. It's done. I can now reveal to the world my creation! It's a little bit complicated, isn't it? Not very easy to read. As I mentioned before, F1 from the 1950s and 60s, oh, it's a doozy. People changing teams multiple times a season, 3 or more teammates in a race. Ugh. Lots of these connections in this area here are just from individual seasons. The most connections on this graph belongs to Joe Sifford, who in 96 starts in Formula 1 had 23 teammates on this graph, 10 wins and 13 losses. How do you show that on a graph? With lots of difficulty, that's how. Basically, everyone here was at some point on the same team as everyone else here. Anyway, you may be noticing that the entire graph does not show draws. As I mentioned before, draws all got filtered out when I started making this graph. I initially intended to put them on. I tried doing sideways dotted lines to show all the draw connections. As you can see, this thing is messy enough as it is. Having those on here too just completely ruined it. But also, as I said before, draws are not definitive. I don't care if 2 people had roughly the same performance in a season. I need to know who's good and who sucks arse. And so I left the draws out and we are left with this. Looking through this thing, we have got the very earliest drivers from the first Formula 1 seasons down here on the left hand side. We then go all the way through up to the current grid in the top right. We do also have a couple outliers here on the side who are basically people who just have connections with each other and don't fit into the main thing over here. We then also have Charles Peake, who in his 2 seasons of Formula 1 had 2 draws and therefore sits on his own. One of Peake's draws is with Timo Glock, who is on this chart, but as I said, no draws and no exceptions. Sorry, Charles, you can sit on your own over there. And so, it's done. Let's take a look at this monstrosity and figure out once and for all who's the best. Let's start with a solid, now retired driver from the last decade as a benchmark. Let's say Jenson Button. In 2016, Button lost to Alonso. Alonso lost to Ocon between 2021 and 2022. Ocon lost to Perez when they were both at Force India, and Perez lost to Button. Okay, no problem. That has to just be a one-off, right? Just a little glitch with the system. Let's try this again. Let's see where we get, okay? It's gonna be fine. Button lost to Ralf Schumacher. There we go. Schumacher lost to Montoya. Montoya lost to Raikkonen. Kimi lost to Vettel. Vettel lost to Ricciardo. Ricciardo lost to Kvyat. Kvyat lost to Sainz. Sainz lost to Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg lost to Stroll. Wait a minute. Stroll lost to Perez. Oh no. And Perez lost to Jenson Button at McLaren. I've wasted months of my life. I thought it would be simple. I thought we'd just get a nice big list and we'd have the answer. All those months. All those hours.
Wasted months of my life.
Thankfully though, not all the graph is like this. While most people do have wins and losses, some people remain undefeated. Our undefeated few, who sit right at the top of their chains, are Toranosuke Takagi, 1 victory. Tom Price, 1 victory. Piercarlo Ghinzani, 1 victory. Pascal Wehrlein, 1 victory. Sebastian Buemi, 1 victory. Felipe Nasr, 1 victory. Jules Bianchi, 1 victory. Thiago Montero, 2 victories. Christian Danner, 2 victories. Alex Caffey, 2 victories. Charles Leclerc, 3 victories, and the only member of the current grid who is undefeated on this graph. Pierluigi Martini, 5 victories, and Juan Manuel Fangio, 9 victories. It's clear to see that not all undefeated careers are made equally. Having a short career through whatever circumstances and beating one teammate is not the same as beating multiple. Fangio obviously stands out on this list as the most impressive, particularly when you consider his teammates include Joe Bonnier, race winner, Sterling Moss, race winner and arguably the greatest to never win a championship, Phil Hill, world champion, and Nino Farina, world champion. However, even despite Fangio's achievement here, he is not at the top of this list. One driver has done even better. 10 victories. No draws, no losses. His name? Alain Prost. He beat Cheever. He beat Johansson. He beat Arnoux. He beat Watson. He beat Alesi. He beat Keke Rosberg, 1 champion. He beat Damon Hill, 2 champions. He beat Lauda, 3 champions. He beat Nigel Mansell, 4 champions. And under the current point system, he beat Ayrton Senna, 5 champions under his belt. The undisputed GOAT. No controversy at all. Just realised I left one of my notes over here. Let me just give this a read. Okay. Right. That's a little bit controversial. We are not gonna get involved in that this video. The numbers are numbers. The chart doesn't lie. Alain Prost, the greatest of all time. And to be honest, being serious for a moment, he is a worthy candidate for the title. 4 world championships, shush. Could have been more, to be honest. Held his own against some incredible teammates. At the time of his retiring, held the record for the most wins in Formula 1 history, and never really had a slump in form. The guy won his 4th title, and Rosberg did. Just said, see ya, and never came back. Which means he never had the end of career fade that we see in so many other greats. And then again, going through this whole process and making this graph, I think really shows the issues with applying this or any other method to Formula 1 to try and rank drivers. And sadly, you can't just solve it by saying this person beat this person in equal machinery. It's not as simple as that. Take this as an example. By this graph, Ocon beat Alonso when they were at Alpine together. That is true. based on the points they gained. It hides some things like the fact that Alonso had 8 retirements to Ocon's 5 in that time. Putting that aside though, is Ocon better than Alonso? No, not even going to have a debate on this one. Alonso is a Hall of Fame driver. Ocon, currently at least, is not. And yet... Formula 1 is complex, and so sometimes the only real way to rank it is using emotions. The numbers say that this person beat this person, but I know in my heart that this person is better. And that's really the fun of Formula 1 sometimes. There really is no way to ever know. I mean, it's not like you can go even deeper than this and compare every single race in the history of the sport. You would need to, I don't know, code a whole ELO engine and then apply it to every single result ever to track every driver's rating up and down through the whole 75-year history of the sport. That would be insane. That would be crazy. You definitely should not do that. You shouldn't do that. I think we know where this is going. Yes, I have made an ELO engine and applied it to Formula 1 to see who is the highest rated of all time. But this video is already long enough, so tune in next time to see my most cursed creation yet. Until then, if you're interested in this graph, I've put a link to it down below. Take a look, follow some of the connections, see if you can make any sense of it. If you find any errors in this graph, don't tell me. I never ever want to see it again. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like down below if you did, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. It's gonna be good. Until then though, I've been Mr. V, and I'll see you guys later.